I was standing 10 feet away when my mother raised her glass and said, "To my daughter, Charlotte, my only daughter." The whole ballroom clapped, and I just stood there, frozen, because I wasn't Charlotte. I was Dana, her other daughter, the one she stopped inviting to Christmas after I married a schoolteacher instead of a CEO. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just watched her rewrite our family, with me edited out. I'm Dana, and this is the story of how I gave my mother the one thing she never gave me: grace. If someone you loved ever made you feel invisible, drop a single dot below. Sometimes that's all it takes to say, "I see you." I kept asking myself why I still showed up. Habit. Hope. Or maybe I just wanted her to say it. "I'm proud of you." Instead, I stood behind a pillar near the buffet table, staring at my untouched glass of Merlot, wondering if I'd become the family's cautionary tale. The gala went on. Chandeliers shimmered, waiters drifted past with crab puffs and lemon tarts, and my mother glided through the room like she owned it. And maybe she did. She'd built a life out of immaculate appearances. Every hair in place, every story polished. Except me. I was the wrinkle in her fabric, the daughter who married for love, not leverage, and tonight I was just omitted. "Do you want to leave?" Even asked, his hand brushing mine. I shook my head. She was laughing with someone I didn't recognize. She used to laugh like that at my school recitals. Used to sit front row and whisper, "That's my girl." Funny how fast a mother's memory can shrink. I didn't approach her. Didn't correct her speech. Didn't even say goodbye. I walked out the back exit, heels echoing across the marble, into the January cold. My breath fogged the air as I waited for our car. Behind me, applause erupted again. Charlotte must have taken the stage. Of course she did. That night, I sat cross-legged on our kitchen floor, eating cereal I didn't want. Evan leaned against the counter. Silent. Present. "She looked right at me," I said, "and still chose not to see me." He nodded. "That's not on you." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But when your own mother stops calling you her daughter, you start wondering what you are to anyone. Would you speak up if your family started pretending you didn't exist? Drop your story, or a dot below, and tell me, where are you listening from? Tuesday mornings were always the quietest. The dishwasher hummed. Evan read the news on his tablet, and I sat by the window with my second cup of coffee, pretending it still warmed me. Outside, Portland was its usual soft gray. Rain clung to the leaves. Our mailbox leaned a little more to the left since the storm in October. I kept meaning to fix it. Inside, everything was neat, but not curated. Books stacked on the bench seat. Our daughter's glittery sneakers by the door. A banana bread cooling on the rack that neither of us had touched since yesterday. Evan looked up at me, his glasses slipping slightly down his nose. "You slept." I nodded. Not a lie, not quite the truth. "I dreamt of the lake house, that one summer." He smiled, the kind that carried memory. "The year your mom insisted on white linen everything." I laughed. "She made us eat watermelon with forks. Said the juice made our fingers look unrefined." Evan chuckled and returned to his article. But the laugh caught in my throat, because even in the memory, she had found a way to wipe the joy clean. Later that afternoon, I opened the hall closet and pulled out a box labeled college. It smelled like paper and time. Inside, a faded Yale sweatshirt, a few playbills, and a sealed envelope. I knew the handwriting. My name, in her cursive. Dana Lay, for after graduation. I had never opened it. That summer, we'd fought about Evan. And I'd left before the ceremony, skipping the brunch she planned at the country club. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, thumb tracing the flap, but I couldn't bring myself to break the seal. Not yet. Some wounds weren't scars. They were open windows. And that letter felt like wind. That evening, Charlotte posted a new photo, her in a navy cocktail dress, our mother beside her in pearls. Caption: "Strong women raise strong women." My stomach didn't twist. It barely moved. I was getting used to being the daughter whose absence never disrupted the shot. So, I closed Instagram and went to marinate chicken for tomorrow. Even silence had a schedule. I stopped by the grocery store on my way home from a client session. The usual lemons, rosemary, frozen peas. A woman in a red raincoat was arguing about coupons at self-checkout. It was oddly comforting. Real life didn't perform. I scanned my phone while waiting in line. One unread message from my mother. Just a forwarded article. 10 Habits of Highly Successful Daughters. No note. No. Thinking of you. Just the link. I didn't open it. I knew what she meant. I was fluent in her subtext by now. Back in the car, I turned the radio off. Some days I didn't want sound. Just windshield wipers dollar and the rhythmic ache of remembering. Home was quiet. Evan was still at the school. Parent conferences, most likely. I left the groceries on the counter and walked straight to the hall, closet again. The box was where I left it. But I didn't touch the envelope this time. Instead, I pulled out the white binder beneath it. Wedding plans, Dana Clevin. Our names in soft silver. I hadn't looked at it in years. Inside fabric swatches, receipts, cake sketches, and tucked in the back, an RSVP card. My mother's handwriting bus. Respectfully declines. Prior engagement. That engagement had been a garden party at the Whitmores. I remembered because it made the Style and Society section. She wore a lavender shift dress and smiled for the camera beside Charlotte. I wore off white and cried in the powder room. Not because she didn't come, but because I realized that day she had already decided. I wasn't the version of me she wanted to claim. The oven beeped, startling me. I'd forgotten the rosemary chicken. The edges were browning too fast, but the center still pale. I lowered the heat and stood still. It wasn't the big moments that haunted me. It was the quiet ones. The RSVP left unsigned. The birthday call that never came. The holiday group text where I was CC'd, but never mentioned. These weren't acts of anger. They were acts of erasure. Soft, consistent, deadly. Like being snowed in, except no one remembered you were in the house. That night, I pulled out the old photo album from the shelf Evan had reinforced last spring. The one with the cracked green leather spine. The one my mother gave me on my 30th birthday with the note. For the memories that matter. Inside, photos of my childhood were carefully arranged. But only up until junior year of college. There was the trip to Cape Cod. Me in a floppy sun hat, smiling under a striped umbrella. Mom beside me, holding iced tea, her eyes squinting against the sun. I remembered that day. I'd found a sand dollar, whole and perfect. She told me to put it back. Some things look better when they're left where they belong. At the time, I thought she meant the ocean. I turned another page. My graduation photo was missing. There was a blank slot, even though I knew she'd been there. I remembered the speech. The floral dress. The tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She came because it would have looked worse if she hadn't. Evan's mother was in every frame from that weekend. Holding my hand. Passing me tissues. Telling me it was okay to feel both proud and broken. I realized in that moment that the person who mothered me that day wasn't the woman who gave me her face. The next morning, I opened the envelope. The one labeled Fas Dana Lay for after graduation. Inside was a card. Simple, white. her handwriting in blue ink. I hope you'll reconsider the internship with Whitmore Financial. It's not too late to correct course. That was it. No. Congratulations? No. You did it. Just a reminder that in her mind, my life was still an essay she could redline. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter until the light shifted. Then I folded it carefully and placed it back in the envelope, not out of sentiment, but because it no longer hurt. She hadn't abandoned me. She had simply never known me. And that made all the difference. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. I heard the back gate click, even coming home. I didn't get up. I stayed where I was, hand resting on the envelope, its edges soft from time. It was the first time in years I didn't feel the need to be chosen. Only seen. It started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. I was cleaning out the spice cabinet, balancing cumin and paprika in one hand, when Evan's voice drifted in from the hallway. He was in the garage, talking low. I wouldn't have paid attention until I heard her name. Yeah, Karen called. Again. No, I didn't tell Dana. You know how she gets when it's about her mom. My hands froze. A glass jar of turmeric slipped, hit the counter, and shattered into golden dust. I didn't move. Didn't call out. Didn't breathe. Just listened, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel erased. I felt managed. He came in a few minutes later, wiping his hands with that old towel we never throw away. Hey, he said, too brightly. I'm thinking Thai tonight. Or should we cook? I swept the turmeric into a paper towel, folded it slow. I heard you in the garage. He blinked. Oh, that. Yeah, she left a voicemail about some family brunch. Didn't seem important. Didn't seem important. I repeated, my voice flatter than I intended. She said it's just siblings. He added, as if that made it better. As if I hadn't been born in that family, bled in that house, buried pieces of myself in that garden. Later that night, I went searching for the voicemail. I knew Evan didn't delete it. He always archived things. He said it was a habit from teaching. And there it was. Sast Karenlin 2:04 p.m., transcribed. Just wanted to make sure Dana doesn't hear about the brunch. Charlotte's bringing someone new, and I don't want awkward energy. I know you understand, Evan. You always have. Awkward energy. I stared at those words until they stopped looking like language. Until they just became the sound of doors closing. Not slammed. Just quietly, firmly, from the inside. I didn't confront Evan. Not yet. I needed to know how many doors had already been closed without me noticing. The next morning, I didn't speak much. I made coffee like usual. Set out 2 mugs. Toasted bread. Evan came into the kitchen still in his flannel pajama pants, hair damp from the shower. He kissed the top of my head like nothing had changed. And maybe for him, nothing had. We sat in silence as the sun pushed through the blinds. He scrolled his phone. I watched crumbs collect in the corner of his plate. You know, I said. It's funny how you can live in a house and still be the last to know when you're not invited somewhere. He paused, thumb hovering over his screen. Dana. I shook my head. Don't, I'm not mad. I'm just taking notes. After he left for work, I opened my laptop and searched. Charlotte Lynn, event photographer. She'd been featured in Northwest Society magazine 2 months ago. A charity gala for something or other. There she was, smiling in a crimson velvet gown, our mother beside her, proud as ever. The caption read, "S. Portland's most poised mother-daughter duo." Now I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because I had stopped being surprised years ago. Still, there was a sting. A slow, dull one. Like when you press into a bruise, just to remind yourself it's still there. I opened the group family thread. Muted for months, but never left. The latest messages: plans for Charlotte's engagement dinner. Color palettes, wine pairings, signature cocktails. My mother's texts were full of exclamation marks. Champagne tower confirmed. She said YS to the blue sapphire napkins. I scrolled back until I saw my own name. Early last year. Dana won't make it. She's been busy. No one replied. Not even with a thumbs up. And the truth, I hadn't been busy. I just hadn't been asked. That afternoon, I found the invitation wedged under a pile of insurance mail. Cream envelope. Gold calligraphy. CHRLOT CLIHC Ibride Dine ER. At the bottom, Azer's formal attire, adults only, family forward, family forward. What does that even mean, when you're expected to stay behind? I set the invitation on the kitchen counter, right next to Evan's coffee mug. He would see it when he came home. I didn't write a note. Didn't underline anything. Just left it there, like evidence. Then I walked into the laundry room and pulled out the whites. Our daughter's socks, Evan's undershirts, my softest cardigan. I folded slowly, deliberately, like handling something fragile. But my hands kept shaking. Not out of anger. Out of something quieter. A feeling I hadn't named yet. It wasn't grief. I had already grieved that version of my family. No. This was different. It was the beginning of clarity. By evening, Evan still hadn't mentioned the card. We ate takeout, pad thai and spring rolls, on the couch. He asked how my client meetings went. I asked if the seniors at school were driving him crazy. We laughed, we touched knees, and still, nothing. He knew. I knew he knew. But in our home, some truths were passed silently, like dishes during dinner. No one said anything, but everyone knew what wasn't served. After he fell asleep, I got up and walked through the dark house barefoot. The hallway light buzzed, soft and amber. Our cat stirred in the corner, then went back to sleep. I opened the hallway closet and pulled out the envelope again. The one with my mother's note after graduation. I opened it a second time. Reread the sentence. It's not too late to correct course. I held it under the light, like it might fade if I stared long enough. Then I whispered to no one in particular. What if I'm not the one off course? I sat there, on the floor, my back against the wall, envelope in hand, and realized something simple. Devastatingly simple. My family didn't forget me. They just preferred the version of me they could talk around. The quiet, agreeable version. The one who didn't ask to be counted. But I was done with that woman. She had folded enough napkins, kept enough peace, and swallowed enough of her voice to last a lifetime. They wanted a dinner without awkward energy. They were about to learn what silence sounds like when it finally starts to speak. It was a Wednesday when the package arrived. No note. No return address. Just a slim cardboard envelope. Slid under our front door while I was in the shower. I found it lying on the rug. A damp at the corners from the Portland mist. My name handwritten in all caps. Dana Jeech. No, Mrs. No. And family. Just me. I didn't open it right away. I made tea first. Let the kettle whistle. Let the silence tighten. Then I sliced it open and pulled out 3 photographs. All printed on thick matte paper, edges crisp, not digital copies, not screenshots, real, intentional. The first photo was of Charlotte and our mother, Karen, standing in front of a white tent. A brunch maybe. Maybe the engagement dinner. I couldn't tell. But what I saw, what made my stomach drop, was the table card on the linen next to them. It read Nazareth reserved. Family only access, and beneath it, a list of names, handwritten in gold. Charlotte, Karen, Eli, Uncle Rob, Aunt Marie. And at the very bottom, S. Do not seat Dana under any circumstance. Droxish, initialed KL. The second photo was a candid. My mother laughing, hand on Charlotte's shoulder. Someone in the background. Maybe Ivan. Blurred out by motion. He wasn't supposed to be there. He told me he'd been at school that night, said the HVAC broke. Said he stayed late for the contractor. But that was his jacket. And I would know the way he slouched, anywhere. I felt the burn crawl up my spine. Not betrayal. Not yet, but the cold recognition that the world was moving around me. Done. And no one had the decency to let me know. The third photo was just a hallway. Plain, dimly lit. But I knew that wallpaper. The Whitmore's Country Club. Tucked into the corner was a placard. An event listing for the night. Oz private reception, Lynn family only. Dawson to the date. Last weekend. The same night Evan brought home champagne and said it was a school gift. That was the moment. Right there. The hinge. The part where everything quiet became something else entirely. I set the photographs down on the kitchen island, careful not to let my fingers smudge the edges. There was something sacred about proof. Not because it changed anything, but because it took away the last excuse to pretend. The kettle behind me clicked off. I let the water sit. The tea would steep itself bitter, but I didn't care. I walked back to the table, pulled out the chair, and just sat. Hands on the edge of the wood, back straight. Heart loud. I'd spent so long defending them. Telling myself it wasn't intentional. That maybe they just forgot. That maybe I didn't make it easy to love me. But those words. Mas. Do not seat Dana under any circumstance. Mas. They left no room for misunderstanding. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was policy. Planned and printed in gold ink. When Evan got home, he found me still there, tea untouched, photos stacked like a report. He paused. I didn't look at him. Didn't move. What's this? He asked, voice quiet. I slid the stack forward without a word. His breath caught on the third image. The one with the hallway. The date. The jacket. I didn't know they'd be there, he said. Too quickly. Too practiced. So you did go, I said. It wasn't a question. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I wanted to understand what I was protecting you from. That sentence landed like ice. Not because of what it said, but because of what it meant. He didn't believe me. Not really. Not when it counted. I stood up slowly, every muscle brittle. You wanted to understand. I repeated. I've been living inside that understanding for years. You just visited it for an hour and came home with champagne. Ivan looked down. Ashamed, maybe. Or just exhausted. Either way, I didn't follow up. Didn't push. Didn't yell. I was past fury. Past explanation. I was in that strange, steady space where pain starts turning into distance. And distance, if you're not careful, becomes permanent. That night, after Evan went to bed, I found myself staring at the dishwasher. It was humming through the rinse cycle, steam curling up the sides. I stood there barefoot, arms crossed, watching it work the way a machine should. Predictable. Consistent. Uncomplicated. I missed that kind of certainty. The kind I used to believe love came with. I thought about the first time Evan met my mother. How she shook his hand too long, then said, "Teachers have noble hearts. But noble doesn't pay for legacy." I had laughed it off then. Tried to smooth the moment over. He squeezed my knee under the table, his way of saying, "I've got this." That night, he told me, "She doesn't have to like me, only you do." And I'd believed him. Because back then, belief was free. Now, I wasn't sure what I believed. That he loved me. Yes. That he saw how deep this cut went. Maybe not. Because love without understanding is just decoration. Nice to look at. Useless when it rains. I opened the cabinet and pulled down the old wine glass with the crack along the base. The one my mother gifted me the day I got the Yale offer. I remembered the note that came with it. "You've made us proud. Finally." Even then, her praise arrived wrapped in qualifiers. I poured half a glass and sat at the kitchen table, watching the light from the fridge reflect off the tile. I could still hear her voice, the last time we argued on the phone. "I'm not cutting you out, Dana. I'm protecting what I've built." And what she built. A story. A curated bloodline. A family that looked like something she could frame. I just didn't match the frame. I took a long sip of wine and stared at the ceiling. The quiet pressed in. Not cruel. Just final. Then I whispered aloud to the dishwasher, the dark. The night. What kind of mother writes her own daughter's name onto a do-not-seat list? Would you expose the truth? Or protect your family's image, even when they've already erased you? I was folding the last stack of bridal robes when my phone buzzed. Daniel. Again. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Then I swiped. "We need to talk. Alone. Before rehearsal dinner." My stomach turned. I hadn't answered any of his messages since the night Emily asked me to be her maid of honor, but now it felt like running wasn't an option anymore. I texted back 3 words. 1 hour. Coffee loft. It was neutral ground. Well, lit. Crowded, impossible to lose control. Still, my fingers trembled as I poured myself into jeans and a trench coat. The rain outside mirrored the heaviness in my chest. When I arrived, he was already there. Corner booth. Black jacket. Unshaven. And just like the first night, we locked eyes across the room. But this time, I didn't smile. "Olivia." He stood, voice soft. "Thank you for coming." "I'm not here for closure," I said, sliding into the seat. "I'm here for the truth." He exhaled slowly, then nodded. "I didn't plan for this," he started. "It was supposed to be just one night. I didn't even know you were Emily's friend." I stared at him. "Is that supposed to make it better?" "No," he said quietly. "I just need you to know I didn't mean to hurt either of you." The words fell flat. I remembered the way he'd touched my wrist that night at the gallery, the way he leaned in like I was the only woman in the world. Lies dressed as romance. "She thinks you're her fresh start," I whispered. "You're the safe guy. The dream." He looked down. "I wanted to be that. I tried. But you're not." "No." For a long moment, we sat in silence. Then I pulled something from my coat pocket. A folded photo. The one he'd taken of me in the park, when we still thought we were strangers. I slid it across the table. "You left this in my mailbox." His eyes widened. "That wasn't meant to." "Meant to what?" "Remind me of something that never should have happened." He reached for it. I placed my hand over it. "You don't get to keep pieces of me." When I stood up, his voice caught me. "Are you going to tell her?" I didn't answer. Just looked at him one last time. And left. But outside, the question clung to me like mist on my coat. Was I really going to tell Emily, or bury it again, and smile through the toasts until... At home, I opened our shared Google Doc for the rehearsal speech. Emily had left a note. "Add anything from our college days. You were always the better writer." I closed the laptop. My hands shook too much to type. I didn't sleep that night. The rehearsal dinner was less than 24 hours away, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily. Laughing, glowing, trusting me with every detail of her big day. She'd asked me to hold her bouquet, adjust her veil, speak first at the toast. I was supposed to protect her. But from what? A mistake she hadn't seen coming. Or a truth too cruel to say out loud. The next morning, I sat on the porch with my coffee, wrapped in Evan's old hoodie, watching the neighborhood wake up. Birds arguing over bread crusts, sprinklers ticking on across the street, a woman jogged by with golden retrievers that barked at everything. Everything felt so normal. So stupidly normal. And I hated that. That the world could just move on while I sat here with a truth that could shatter someone I loved. I picked up my phone, typed Emily's name, then deleted it, typed again. Paused, deleted. There was no version of the message that didn't destroy something. At noon, I drove to the bridal shop to pick up Emily's steamed gown. The manager handed it to me with a smile. "I've never seen a bride so sure," she said. "Or a maid of honor so calm." I nodded, tight-lipped. Because what do you say to that? That I wasn't calm, just numb. That the gown in my hands felt heavier than truth itself. That the woman I was supposed to stand beside might never speak to me again. If I did the right thing. I laid the dress gently across the back seat, pulled the seatbelt across it like a seatmate, and drove in silence. No music, no podcast, just the soft sound of organza shifting every time I turned. When I got home, I hung it in my guest room closet, the one with the good light. It caught the afternoon sun, glowed like something sacred. And I thought, if she knew, would she still wear it? Or would the whole thing become one more memory she'd never be able to look at the same? That night, I packed a small envelope. Inside, the photo from the park, a printed screenshot of his text to me, and the name of the hotel he stayed at the night we. I sealed it, wrote her name in ink, no return address. Then I sat there for an hour, staring at the envelope, wondering what kind of woman sends that to her best friend. The night before her wedding, the rehearsal dinner was held at Blue Cedars, a private estate outside Portland with vineyards, lantern-lit walkways, and a view that made every photo look like a magazine spread. I arrived 15 minutes early, not because I was eager, but because I wanted to see the layout. Feel the room before it filled. Emily was already there, standing under the string lights with a glass of champagne, laughing with someone's cousin. She wore a silky cream jumpsuit, her hair pinned in soft waves, and she looked happy. Not staged happy. Not smile for the camera happy, but the kind of happiness that makes you feel protective just looking at it. "Liv." She waved, spotting me. I forced a smile and walked over. "You look incredible," I said. She twirled, grinning. "Can you believe this is happening? I feel like we blinked and it's tomorrow." I nodded, though the only thing I could feel was the weight of that envelope. Still inside my purse. Her voice dropped. "I just wanted to say thank you. For standing by me. For never leaving." I swallowed hard. "You have no idea how much that means." Someone called her over to check on the seating cards. She squeezed my arm and floated away. I stayed rooted, one hand on my clutch, one foot already outside my own body. Then I saw him. Daniel. Stepping out of a black satin jacket slung over his shoulder, looking like the kind of man who ruins women without ever raising his voice. Our eyes met. And for a split second, his expression changed. A flicker of something, panic, recognition, regret, then nothing. He turned, kissed Emily's cheek, folded into the crowd like he hadn't spent months building a lie between us. I reached for the envelope. Felt its corners under my fingers. Sharp. Real. And yet, my feet didn't move. My mouth didn't open. My truth stayed zipped inside a cream leather clutch. Because when love is blind, is it kindness to let it see? Or cruelty? Have you ever stood in a room, knowing something that could shatter it? Tell me below. Would you speak, or let the night go on pretending? I tried to keep moving. Chat with the florist, smile for photos, Not at old aunts who barely remembered my name. But I could feel it. That envelope. Like a live wire in my purse. Like it could hum through the fabric and burn me from the inside out. "Refill?" someone asked. I turned. It was Lydia, Emily's older sister. She held out a glass of rosé, her eyebrows arched just enough to ask a second question. I took it. "Thanks." She leaned in. "So you okay?" I blinked. "Yeah." "Why? You look like someone's ghost just showed up." I forced a laugh. Maybe just the nerves. "Tomorrow's big." Lydia didn't buy it. She never did. She sipped her wine, gaze drifting toward Emily and Daniel across the patio. They were posing for a photo. His hand on her waist. Her head tilted just right. "I don't know what it is," Lydia said softly, "but something feels off." I held my breath. "Off how?" She shrugged. "Can't put my finger on it. Just this weird feeling in my gut, like we're all clapping too soon, before the act's really over." I said nothing. Because there it was. The thing I'd been drowning in, finally given a name. Emily waved us over for a group picture. Lydia took my hand and pulled me toward the arbor. The photographer framed us between strings of fairy lights and late summer roses. "Everyone say forever." Click. And I wondered how many fake smiles were captured right before someone's world split in half. Later, while Emily disappeared to check the playlist, Lydia turned to me again. "If you ever had something to tell her," she said, "now would be the time." My heart stuttered. "What makes you say that?" She looked at me. Long, sharp. "Because you're not blinking. And people only forget to blink when they're holding back something that matters." Dinner was almost over. When the first crack appeared, it wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, just a slip, a single sentence from a tipsy cousin named Betrayal. She was recounting a story from the engagement party. How Emily had been nervous Daniel was too aloof that night. Then she giggled and said, "But hey, at least he wasn't flirting with that redhead anymore. What was her name again? Liv something." I froze. The air thickened. Cutlery paused midair. Charlotte, one of Emily's cousins, raised an eyebrow. "Liv? You mean Olivia?" Betrayal blinked, swayed slightly. "Yeah, oops. Wrong timeline, right?" She laughed again, high-pitched and clueless. I could feel Emily's eyes before I saw them. Sharp. Seeking. "Wait," she said, voice calm but tight. "What do you mean flirting?" Betrayal shrugged. "I don't know. Just something I heard at the bar that night. Didn't mean anything, Em. They just looked cozy. Like, familiar cozy." The table went silent. Daniel set down his wine glass, a little too carefully. "Okay," he said, trying for lightness. "That's enough wine talk for tonight." But it was too late. The air had shifted. And Emily? She was looking at me now. Not him. Me. "Liv?" she asked. One word. One syllable. But it cracked something wide open. I opened my mouth. Then closed it. Because what do you say when the moment comes there, and the truth is already halfway out of the room? Daniel stood abruptly. "I think we all need some air." Emily didn't move. She was still staring at me. Still waiting. And in my purse, the envelope grew heavier than my breath. I stood slowly, hands cold, mind screaming. "Amelie," I began. But she raised a hand. Her face was unreadable. "No," she said softly. "I don't want a script. Just the truth." Emily didn't wait for my answer. She turned, walked away from the table, heels clicking sharp against the stone floor, each step echoing louder than the last. Daniel called after her. So did Lydia. But she didn't stop. Didn't look back. And just like that, the rehearsal dinner ended without a toast. Without a goodbye. Without the version of tomorrow we had all rehearsed. I stayed behind, still standing, still clutching the chair like it might keep me upright. No one spoke to me. They avoided eye contact, like silence was safer than choosing a side. Lydia finally crossed the space between us. "Give her tonight?" she said. "Don't follow. Don't text. Just give her space." I nodded. It was the only thing I could do without falling apart. At home, I laid the envelope on the kitchen counter. Unopened. Untouched. All that careful damage I had packaged, but never delivered. Now irrelevant. Because Emily hadn't heard it from me. She heard it from a drunk cousin who didn't know where the line was. And now, I didn't know if I'd ever get the chance to tell her the whole story. I sat on the floor of the hallway, knees pulled to my chest, the echo of her voice still in my ears as stillers. Just the truth. But I hadn't said it. I'd hesitated, stuttered, let her walk away carrying only a shard of the whole thing. And somehow, that felt worse than lying. Because silence is also a choice, and I had made mine too late. The next morning there was no text, no call, no new notifications. I checked twice, refreshed the screen like maybe it had glitched. But nothing. Just the usual. A school newsletter, a weather alert, and an ad for bridesmaid jewelry I no longer needed. I waited until 9:14, then tuned in 22. By 11 I couldn't pretend anymore. I dialed her. It rang, and rang. Then straight to voicemail. Her voice came on too bright, too cheerful. "Hey, it's Emily. Can't get to the phone? Probably covered in frosting or flower petals. Leave a message." I didn't. I hung up and stared at the wall like it might offer clarity. It didn't. By noon I got dressed, not in anything dramatic. Just jeans, a slate gray sweater, and the same boots I wore to our first brunch back in college. I drove to her apartment. The streets felt quieter than usual, as if Portland itself knew not to interrupt this silence. When I pulled up, her car was gone. So were the string lights on her balcony. The wreath she made out of rosemary and ribbon, gone too. And taped to the door, a sign in her handwriting. S. Deliveries. Please hold at front office. I won't be home. Just not out. To not be back soon. Just gone. I stood there a long time, trying to picture where she could be. With Daniel, with Lydia, or alone, folding and unfolding the version of me she thought she knew, against the version she didn't want to believe. I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope. I almost slid it under her door. Almost. But I didn't. Because this time, if the truth came, it would have to come with my voice, my face, my full weight, not paper. That night it came. Not a knock, not a voicemail, just a ping, a new email. Subject, final wedding update, from Emily something borrowed. Come, I hesitated. My fingers hovered. Then I clicked. The message was short. Twar hi all. Twar just a small update. The ceremony will remain private. Twar immediate family and the couple only. Twar please respect this space and decision. Twar no further explanation will be given. Twar thank you for understanding. No greeting. No signature. Just a line in the sand. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, until the cursor blinked itself into silence. Then I read it again. And again. Immediate family only. Which I was not. Not anymore. Maybe never had been. I closed the laptop slowly, as if shutting it more gently could soften what had already been severed. The envelope still sat on my desk, unopened, unsent. But its contents felt loud now. Irrelevant in one way, but heavy in another. Because this wasn't about Daniel anymore. Not really. This was about something older. Deeper. Something that had cracked beneath our friendship long before he ever entered the picture. Trust. Not the kind you name out loud, but the kind that slips when your silence becomes self-protection. I picked up the envelope, held it one last time, then tore it in half. And again, until it was just paper, not evidence, not closure, Just paper. I flushed the pieces down the sink, watched them swirl and vanish, then stood there, hands braced on porcelain, heart hollow. Because losing a friend doesn't sound like a door slamming. It sounds like nothing at all. Like an inbox that doesn't ding. A group chat that doesn't ping. A laugh that never finishes echoing. I was slicing strawberries for French toast when the knock came. 3 short taps. Then silence. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door, expecting Lydia. Maybe a florist mix, up. Or no one. But it was Daniel, in jeans and a wrinkled shirt, eyes bloodshot, hair flattened like he hadn't slept. "Can I come in?" he asked. Voice low. I didn't answer. Just stepped aside. He walked to the kitchen island, looked around like he'd never been inside. Even though he had. Once. On a night I still tried not to revisit. "I messed up," he said finally. "I should have told her myself." I leaned against the counter. "What did you do?" He pulled something from his coat pocket. A phone. Unlocked. Open to a voicemail app. He hit play. "Twar, Daniel. It's Liv. I need you to stop texting. I'm not going to cover for you. Not now. Not ever again." See my own voice. Clear, cold, final. I remembered leaving that message, weeks ago. Before the envelope. Before the dinner. Before everything. "I didn't delete it," he said. "She found it last night." I'd left my phone on the sink. I closed my eyes. Exhaled slowly. "So she knows." He nodded. "She left. Called off the wedding. Didn't even pack a bag. Just took her keys and went." His voice cracked. "She didn't say a word. Just looked at me like I wasn't even real." I looked at him. For the first time in weeks, really looked, and saw not a man who made a mistake, but a man who thought he could control how the truth arrived. "Just like I did." He stepped forward. "If you talk to her." I raised a hand. "No." He blinked. "No more messages. No more requests. You had your moment to choose her. You didn't." The message came 2 days later. Not a call. Not a knock. Just a padded envelope, with no return address, and my name in sharp black ink. I opened it slowly, fingers trembling, even though I already knew what it was. Inside a folded lining card, from the wedding set I helped design, still scented faintly of gardenia. And across the center in Emily's handwriting. "Steady, deliberate, sexas Olivia. Thank you for your silence. It told me everything. No punctuation, no, with love, no space for reply, just finality, elegant, cruel, true." I sat on the edge of the bed, the card still in my hand, and let the weight of her absence settle in. Not loud. Not sharp, but quiet in the way grief always is when it has no place to land. I wanted to scream, to call her and say, "I was trying to protect you." But I wasn't. Not really. I was protecting myself. From her anger. From the fallout. From the role I'd played in her heartbreak. I waited too long. And now the moment was gone. That night, I packed the last of the bachelorette decorations into a cardboard box. The personalized champagne flutes. The playlist we made together. The veil clips. The framed photo of us laughing on the beach. I didn't cry. Not even when I sealed the box with shaking hands. Because this wasn't a breakup. It wasn't a betrayal. It was an erasure. She hadn't yelled. Hadn't accused. She had simply closed the door. Quietly, firmly, and without looking back. I kept the card for 3 days. Tucked in the drawer beside my bed, next to old movie stubs, and the necklace Emily gave me at graduation. I'd open it sometimes. Reread the line. "Thank you for your silence." It told me everything. And every time it landed harder. Not because it was wrong, but because it was right. She had always been the brave one. The one who spoke up. The one who believed that love meant honesty, even when it hurt. I was the one who hesitated, Who paused too long and let truth rot in a clutch bag at a wedding rehearsal? I thought about writing her an apology, an explanation, a last-ditch plea. But I didn't, because I knew it wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about trust. And trust, once broken, doesn't respond to words, only time, and sometimes not even that. On Sunday, I walked to the mailbox and dropped in a different envelope. Addressed to her mother's house, no return. Inside, a check to reimburse half the wedding costs I'd helped plan. A note that read simply, "I don't want anything that came from a lie." It wasn't closure. There's no such thing. But it was a way to stop holding the edges of something that had already unraveled. That night, I pulled the bachelorette box from the closet and drove it to Goodwill. I didn't cry in the parking lot. Didn't linger. Just dropped it off, signed the receipt, and drove home with the windows down. Let the cold Portland air slice through the silence. It didn't fix anything, but it made breathing easier. Some losses don't leave bruises. They leave space. The kind you carry quietly. The kind you learn to walk with. What would you do if the only person who saw your full story no longer wanted to read it? It's been 6 weeks. The wedding never happened. At least not the way it was planned. Someone on Facebook posted a blurry photo. The Emily in jeans and a green windbreaker, standing outside a courthouse with Lydia by her side. No flowers. No white dress. Just ink on paper, laughter, and a silence that made headlines unnecessary. She married herself that day. I don't mean legally. I mean something deeper. A kind of declaration. Sexter, I choose me. Dusser, I haven't heard from her since the envelope. Not a text. Not a view on my story. Not a single digital ghost. And maybe that's the point. Some goodbyes don't come with a door slam. Some come with an absence so complete. You stop hoping for noise. I still walk past the wine aisle and remember her favorites. Still hear her voice every time someone says, "Maid of honor." But the ache isn't raw anymore, it's textured, folded into the fabric of my day. Grief that no longer screams, just nods from the corner. I've started running again. Not for fitness. For rhythm. There's something about footsteps that don't ask for anything. That just move forward. Every morning, I pass by the same corner cafe where we used to plan bridal menace. And every morning, I order one coffee. No second cup. No extra straw. It used to sting. Now, it just reminds me that I'm still here. One afternoon, I found a photo tucked in the back of an old journal. The three of us, me, Emily, Lydia, arms around each other, laughing like the world would never split. I almost threw it away, almost. But instead, I slipped it back between the pages. Not out of denial. Out of gratitude. Because for a long time, those memories were real. And maybe that's the hardest part of losing someone who's still alive, accepting that both versions can exist. The warmth. And the wreckage. I don't blame her. Not anymore, she asked for truth. I gave her hesitation. She gave me loyalty for years. I gave her a delayed silence dressed as protection. But what she gave me last, the choice to walk away, taught me the most. That loyalty doesn't mean invisibility. That love, without courage, becomes complicity. A few days ago, I received a text from Lydia. She's okay. She won't say it, but she misses you. She's just not ready. I stared at those words for a long time. And then, I smiled. Because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel desperate. I felt grateful. Grateful that Emily had someone like Lydia beside her. Grateful that she was healing, even if I wasn't part of that path. Some bridges aren't burned. They're just closed for now. Under repair. Uncertain if they'll ever reopen. I started journaling again, not about her. About me. The parts of myself I had pressed down for years, to make space for someone else's story. And in those pages, I found something unexpected: clarity, not comfort, not closure. Just the stillness of standing in truth after the storm has passed. Last weekend, I signed up to speak at a small women's panel about loyalty and boundaries. I shared my story, not with bitterness, not with blame, just with honesty, and a quiet kind of strength that only comes from losing something you thought was permanent. A woman came up to me afterward, tears in her eyes. "Turfaf, I kept quiet too," she whispered. I thought I was being kind, so we didn't need to say more. Some wounds recognize each other. Emily may never come back. But what she left me with, a mirror, a lesson, a silence loud enough to change me, was more than most endings allow. I keep her last note in a drawer, not as punishment, but as reminder. That silence is a language. And sometimes, it's the only one people believe. So now, when someone asks, "Have you ever lost a best friend?" I say yes. And I don't flinch. Because I didn't lose her to time. Or distance. Or death. I lost her to a moment I wasn't brave enough to rise to. And from that, I learned everything. If you've ever stayed silent when someone deserved your voice, you're not alone. Drop a single "I see you" below, or share the moment you found the courage to speak. Because sometimes healing begins when we tell the truth. Not to them, but to ourselves. The morning was quiet, and for once, so was my heart. Not because everything made sense, but because I had stopped needing it to. Sometimes, strength isn't loud. It's a soft decision to keep walking, even when no one is clapping. If you've ever let go, not out of defeat but out of dignity, share your story below. You are not alone. Every ending can be a new beginning.